Good evening, everybody. Good evening. My name is Michael Swan, and I am the manager of the Student Hub, and I'd like to welcome you all to our annual private housing evening. The team and I will guide you through the steps you'll need to take on your journey to renting accommodation in the private sector this year. Before we start this evening, just a couple of housekeeping points to note. If the fire alarm does go off, please make your way to one of the 6 fire exits in the Great Hall. We have 2 fire exits at the very top of the hall, 2 to the side of the stage, and 2 to the rear. And can you please also ensure that you turn your mobile phones onto silent? This evening, you will notice that in the middle of your exhibition guide, there is a QR code that will take you to our online survey. The feedback that you give will ensure that we continue to deliver events at the college that match your needs. If you complete the survey, you could win a gift voucher for £25. I know, £25. Now let's move on to why you're all here. The majority of you probably live in halls, so moving into private accommodation will be new to most. As well as being the next exciting stage of student life, we are aware that moving from halls into the private sector can be somewhat daunting. We hope this talk will provide some answers to the questions you may have, eliminate any anxieties, and guide you through the housing journey you will most likely be taking. But don't worry, further visits to your halls of residence will take place this May as part of our May Housing Mayhem Month. This evening's presentation will take approximately 25 minutes, and we will cover the key areas of your house hunting journey. We'll talk to you about the first part of your journey, from finding a flatmate, through to where and when to look, moving into your new home, and then what to do when your tenancy has come to an end. So let's look at the first important step you'll need to take: finding a flatmate. The first step in your private housing journey will be to decide on who you'd like to live with. Some of you may decide to live alone, but for the majority moving into the private sector, small groups will be formed. Please consider the following factors before renting: tidiness, noise, sleeping patterns. Do you want to live in a party house or somewhere slightly calmer? Friends and partners. Remember, if your flatmate has a partner staying over all the time, this could increase your bills. And length of stay. Make sure you all want to stay for the whole tenancy, as if you leave before the end, this could incur charges. And also consider your budgets. Okay, so you've decided who you might like to live with. Now it's time to think about setting a budget. How much are you actually going to need to spend? Your major cost will be rent, with Imperial students in the private sector paying anything from £140 to £210 per week per person on rent, depending on how many there are in the group and the type of property you decide on. However, you will need to budget for other weekly costs: utility bills, water, gas, electricity, mobile and internet costs. We estimate at approximately £25 to £30 per week per person. Remember that you don't have to pay council tax, so please make sure you visit the Hub for a council tax exemption letter and send this to the local council when you move into accommodation. Don't forget to set aside a budget for food. Shop together if you like the same thing. You may find it useful to start a housing fund and share the costs for essential household items. Remember to factor in the cost of travelling to and from college on the bus or the train. As full-time students, you will be eligible for a 30% discount from TfL. And finally, socialising. Whether that be an evening out or a trip to the cinema, remember to set aside some money for socialising. So depending on how many of you are sharing or whether you are renting alone, we estimate that you should budget each for between £300 and £350 per week per person. Please bear in mind that if you do decide to live on your own, the costs will be significantly higher, and you will be solely responsible for paying the bills. When you do start to go and look for private accommodation, you'll need to think about the additional costs listed on this slide. If you do decide to rent your accommodation through an agent, you will find yourself paying various fees. These fees are paid before moving into your new house or flat. The first one we're going to look at tonight is for the holding deposit. This is the amount of money that you pay to an agent to secure the property, and this means that the agent cannot rent the property to another group whilst your references are being checked. Most agents will charge you a holding deposit, which is usually a week's rent, but can be anything up to a month's rent. If you then go on to rent the property, this money will become part of your security deposit. But please be aware, if you do pay the holding deposit and then change your mind, you will lose the money you've paid. So only pay the holding deposit once you are sure you want to take the property. You'll also have to pay a security deposit, which in most cases will be 6 weeks' rent. This is the money that the landlord or the agent will hold until the end of your tenancy. You'll also be expected to pay rent in advance, usually 1 calendar month's rent up front. However, if you don't have a UK-based guarantor, then the agent could ask you to pay up to 6 months' rent in advance. And admin fees. The agents will charge you admin fees for drawing up a contract, taking up references, and for any processes that are required. You might also have to pay additional charges while you're renting. Make sure you pay your rent on time so you don't incur any late payment charges. If any of you want to leave the tenancy partway through, you might also pay charges for that. And remember that at the end of the tenancy, you'll have to pay inventory checkout costs, ranging from £100 to £200, depending on the size of the property. So you need to be prepared to pay in the region of £1,600 to £2,000 per person before moving in. Don't forget that under new legislation, agents must now clearly advertise all of these charges in advance. The next step is to decide what type of accommodation you want. This is directly influenced by the number of people you want to live with and your budget. The first example we'll look at tonight is for a room in a shared house or flat. So, if there are 4 or more of you, then the chances are you'll be looking for a house share. This can be the cheaper way to rent, as you can spread the cost of the bills between you. If there is a group of you renting together, some landlords will allow you to use the living room as a bedroom. This will cut down costs as there are more of you sharing. Alternatively, you may wish to live alone, in which case you'd be looking at a studio or a bedsit. However, again, remember that in renting alone, you'll be the only one paying the bills, so ensure you factor this into your budget. Other options are to look at renting with a resident landlord, so essentially lodging. You'd be signing a different type of contract called a license, which is only a permission to occupy and does not give you the same security. However, this may be good for some of you, as it can be cheaper, or alternatively, you could return to purpose-built student halls. There are a number of private halls in London, and you may have met some of the providers already at this evening's exhibition. When deciding on the different types of accommodation with your flatmates, you may have to be realistic and compromise. Unless you have a massive budget, you may not find the perfect property. You need to decide what is important for you, and remember that you'll not be living in the property forever, so be flexible. We've looked at the different types of accommodation. Now let's have a think about the area you might want to live in. Listed on this slide and in your exhibition bags tonight, you'll find an area guide for 2019. Are you happy to live in the city centre, or would you prefer to live somewhere more suburban and slightly further afield? We've calculated the average rent per week and the travel options to South Kensington campus to help you choose an area which best suits your needs. We'd all like to live locally to the college, but some of you will have to live further afield due to your budget. Once again, this is all about having to compromise to get the property you can afford. Have a think about the travel connections from South Kensington and White City campus, the amenities in the local area, and check out the area during the day and the evening. If you're going to the area in the evening, take a friend with you and think about your personal safety. In addition to the area guide, we've produced a short video to recap the points I've just discussed. Let's take a look at the video now.
Flatmates. You gotta love them. No, seriously, you do at least have to like them. It's also good to choose flatmates with the same schedules, budgets, and priorities. So if you prefer, I don't know, paying your rent on time and not setting fire to things, make sure your flatmates feel similarly. Or that a short-haul tenancy agreement could come back to bite you. With those boxes ticked, it's time to find a house. So, you've got your flatmates lined up? Now for the house. There are various types of accommodation you could go for. But, whatever you choose, make sure you go with an established estate agent. You can find a list of them, along with a cheeky offer or two at the Imperial Home Solutions site. Budget is your next consideration. Don't you just love being a responsible adult? Rent, bills, travel, and nothing says responsible adult like a spreadsheet. And finally, don't forget to check the area. That ensuite bathroom won't seem quite so appealing when you're stuck on a bus into uni from Zone 9. With all those boxes ticked, you can move on to paying your deposit.
Hey, my name is Rachel and I'm one of the Student Hub advisors. So now you have a rough idea of who you might like to live with and which area you might like to live in. You now need to decide where to begin your property search. There are a whole range of options available to you. You might wish to find a property via an online search engine, such as Rightmove or Zoopla. You could go via an estate agent, such as the ones listed in your exhibition guide. You also have the option to find property listings on websites such as Spare Room, or even use the student notice boards to get in contact with other Imperial students, also looking for housemates or flatmates to team up with. Alongside this, the college has a website called Imperial Home Solutions, which you might find particularly useful as a starting point. And I'll give you a bit more of a detailed overview as to how the website works. So, beginning your property search in London can be slightly daunting. Imperial Home Solutions has been created as a secure site for Imperial students only. It gives you access to a variety of housing options, all centred in one place. The website has listings for over 400 private landlords, as well as contact details for a range of private halls providers and estate agents, a number of which you've probably already met at the event tonight. There is also a student message board where you can get in contact with other students looking for accommodation or housemates to team up with. All of the landlords and agents advertising on Imperial Home Solutions have been working closely with the college for a number of years and are very familiar with the Imperial students' housing needs. They are also required to give contact information and copies of safety documentation, such as gas safety certificates. The website will also be updated throughout the coming months with the latest news and useful articles to help you in your property search. Okay, so when is the right time to start house hunting? So whilst you may have friends at other universities that have already found a house for next year, the London housing market does operate slightly differently. January or February is probably too soon to be looking. Enjoy relaxing for a little bit longer. Following on from today's event, we would suggest using March, April and May to formulate some initial ideas about accommodation and gather further information. If you do start house hunting too early, agencies more often than not will ask you to pay rent for the period that the property is vacant, as they will expect you to move in within a few weeks of viewing the accommodation. This may then cause issues if you don't plan on moving in until September or want to go home or on holiday over the summer period. However, some of the landlords registered on the Imperial Home Solutions website will let you view the accommodation now and start the contract in September. We would suggest starting to look for properties around about June, July, August, as agencies and landlords will have a much better idea of what will be available come September and October. Even if you did leave your house hunting until the last minute, there'll still be plenty of properties available come September. Okay, so now let's move on and look at one of the more technical sides of renting in London. So the right to rent. So one thing to consider when you visit an agent or a landlord is that they will ask you if you have the right to rent in the UK. On the 1st of February 2016, new legislation came into force that states that once you have found a property and have agreed to the terms and conditions with the landlord or agent, they will require you to prove that you have the right to rent the accommodation. So to prove this, they will likely ask you for a copy of your passport and/or visa. And if you check the website shown on the screen, it will give you a full list of the documents that can be used to prove this. We would strongly advise not sending copies of your documents via email, and do not allow agents or landlords to take your original documents away. If your landlord does wish to do this, we suggest that you copy the document yourself, show them the originals, and then give them the copy. Again, the website provides lots of information on this. In addition to the right to rent legislation, another aspect to consider is whether you might require a rent guarantor. So, if you are looking to rent accommodation in the UK and you want to pay your rent on a monthly basis, then you will most likely require a rent guarantor. Rent guarantors are commonly used by landlords and accommodation providers to ensure that the new tenant will not default on payments of rent. So a rent guarantee agrees to guarantee the payment of your rent to an agent or a landlord in the event that you cannot. So this might be particularly useful for students being asked to make large upfront payments of, say, 6 to 12 months rent in advance. Paying large sums of money in advance can be risky or leave you in a slightly difficult position. For example, should you need to vacate the property early for any reason. By Imperial acting as your rent guarantor, you will be able to pay monthly and protect yourself from risks such as these. The Imperial Rent Guarantor Scheme allows Imperial College to act as a UK-based guarantor for all returning undergraduate students, so all of you guys. Rent guarantees are done on an individual basis and cover accommodation up to the value of £250 per person per week. Last year, the scheme was very popular, and we had 239 successful rent guarantees being put in place. The scheme will reopen again this year in April, and you can find out more information about the scheme by visiting the link displayed on the screen. I'm going to hand over to Emma now, who's going to give you an overview of alternative college accommodation.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, I'm Emma. I'm also one of the advisors at the Student Hub, and next I'm going to talk to you about Evelyn Gardens. If you've enjoyed living in halls and you think you'd like to continue living in Imperial accommodation, we do have one hall of residence that's for returning students. Evelyn Gardens is a recently refurbished hall in South Kensington, close to Gloucester Road Station. It's exclusively for returning undergraduates, and it's on a 51-week contract, so more similar to what you'd find in the private sector. This means you won't need to move out over the summer, so it could be a good option for you if you're considering staying in London for work, an internship, or Europe placement. But it does mean that we can't offer the places to final year students. There isn't a warden team at Evelyn, so students do live more independently, but there are still residence assistants and a 24-hour concierge. You'll also have the convenience of having utility bills included, including internet and contents insurance. There are a range of rooms available, and prices will start at £174 per week, which compares quite favourably to private halls, which tend to be a bit more expensive. Applications will open in early April, and they'll be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. Obviously, it's quite a small hall with only 250 beds, and it's quite popular, so you will still need to think about other options for next year as well. So let's recap what we've told you so far. We've talked about the importance of finding the right flatmates. Are the people you most enjoy socialising with really the people you most want to share with? Do you have the same budgets? If you have a smaller budget, would it be better to live with other flatmates somewhere less expensive? And we had a look at the area guide. You can see that South Kensington is one of the more expensive areas, but for the sake of a few minutes on public transport, you could start to save some money. And think about your other costs. Utility bills will not normally be included, so try to get an idea if you can from previous tenants what they've been paying for their bills. And insurance. Once you move out of halls, your personal possessions won't be covered by contents insurance, so it's something you might want to consider purchasing for yourself. And council tax. Remember to get a council tax exemption letter from the Student Hub and send it straight to the council so they don't send you a bill. But remember, only full-time students are exempt from council tax, so if any of your flatmates are in their final year, this could affect your council tax for the whole flat when they finish their course. So make sure you have this conversation before you move in. And do you all have a UK-based guarantor? Or will some of you need to apply to the rent guarantee scheme before you can sign a contract? Think about all these things before you start viewing property, so you can have everything organised and ready to go for when you find a property that you like. We know there's a lot to think about with private accommodation, and we don't expect you to take everything in at once. So in May, Student Hub's going on tour, and we'll be visiting Prince's Gardens, Paddington, and North Acton. All students are welcome to come to any or all of these roadshows if you want to. And we strongly recommend that you come along because we'll be talking in more detail about private housing contracts, inventories, deposits, maintenance and house repairs. And it's a good opportunity to meet some of the private halls providers and private letting agents and ask them any questions you have while we're there to support you. And because it's over dinner time and you'll all be busy with revision by then, we'll also be bringing along free pizzas. So what happens when you find somewhere? You'll be offered a draft contract, and we offer a free contract checking service all year round at the Student Hub. So we strongly advise that before you sign it, if you have got any questions about your contract, you make an appointment with one of the advisors so we can make sure that you understand everything that you're signing up to. If you pay a holding deposit, make sure you get a full receipt and details of what's been agreed. How long will the property be taken off the market for? And what will happen if you don't take the property? When your offer is accepted and you sign the contract, you'll be asked to pay a security deposit. If it's an assured short-hold tenancy, the landlord or agent is required by law to register this within the Deposit Protection Scheme within 30 days of receiving it. If you don't receive the prescribed information about where your deposit is secured, email your landlord or agent and ask them for this. And when you move in, make sure you notify the council and utility companies. You don't want to be paying the previous tenant's bills. And keep up good communication with your landlord. The landlord can't fix a problem if they don't know about it. So if something needs repairing, let them know right away. Don't let a leaking radiator become a burst pipe and a flooded flat. Remember, you'll all be joint and several liable if a tenant causes any damage in the flat. So you might want to take liability insurance in case your flatmate floods the bathroom or burns a hole in the carpet. You'll be given an inventory to sign. Check this really carefully. The landlord will be expecting you to make changes to it. If something is damaged or missing, make a note of this on the inventory, take photos and email this to the landlord or agent. Make sure you agree the condition at the start and end of the tenancy and attend any check-in or check-out appointments. This is what will be used to assess any claims against your security deposit. And if you do have to message or call the landlord about any issues, make sure you follow this up with a polite email. It's much harder to ignore an email and things can't get forgotten. And remember, we're here all year round, so if you do have any difficulties getting something resolved, you can come to the Student Hub for advice. And it's much easier for us if you have everything recorded in emails as well. So some of you will want to stay in London over the summer. The final day of accommodation for first-year undergraduates in halls this year is Thursday, 27th of June. And you must clear your room and return your key by 10 a.m. to check out on that date. However, for registered Imperial students, we will have spaces available from the 27th of June to the 22nd of September. This is usually in one of our outer halls. Last year it was Woodward. And places can be booked on a short, standard or long stay basis. So you could stay for one night or the whole summer. If you're transferring from term time accommodation on the 27th of June, you will still need to check out at 10 a.m, but you can store your luggage at the summer hall before checking in again at 4 p.m. Full details will be available on our Summer and Halls pages on our website, and applications are open before the end of March. There'll be a wide range of prices and room types, so if you are interested in this, we recommend that you apply early for the best availability. So with these services then, have we wowed you? We're always looking for ways to improve, and we've been able to develop our private housing events based on your feedback. And one of the ways that we do this is through the WOW Awards, where you can nominate staff. It's an international scheme, and Student Hub have done quite well at this recently. Student Hub have been nominated 2 years running as customer services finalists. And Student Hub advisor, Pat Watson, who some of you will know, was awarded Customer Services Professional of the Year in 2017. You can come and see the nice trophy at the Hub. And this scheme has now been rolled out to the halls of residence. So if there is a member of staff that you see really providing excellent service, you can go online and write them a nomination. It's a nice way to make sure they get some acknowledgement and let their manager know how well you think they're doing. So that's everything from me, and now I'll hand back to my manager, Michael.
That just leaves me to say a huge thank you to both Emma and Rachel, our speakers tonight, and a very big thank you to you all for attending the presentation. We will be around in the QTR afterwards if you have any questions, and our stewards will be on hand now to help you exit the Great Hall and guide you back down to the QTR. Good night, and thank you again.